If it's raining where you are right now, lock your windows. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like something you would hear in an old horror movie. But after you hear what happened to these two women last October, you lock them too. One of them saw a hand pressed against our glass. No body attached. The other one saw a woman walking beside her in a downpour, bone dry, floating an inch off the sidewalk. Both still alive. Neither of them sleeps anymore. Rebecca Hayes inherited a farmhouse from her grandmother last October, a property nobody in the family knew existed. Built in 1902, sitting on 47 across a forest in rural Vermont. The nearest neighbor 3 miles away, the nearest town 12. Rebecca was 28. She lived alone in Boston. Her grandmother had practically raised her, and the old woman had left her this house in the will without ever once mentioning it was hers. Rebecca should have asked why. Instead, she packed an overnight bag and drove up on a Friday afternoon to check the place out, just for the weekend. 6 hours on the road, she got there at sunset. The farmhouse sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by maple trees that had already turned blood red. 2 stories, white paint, peeling. A wide front porch with a bay window that faced the forest. Rebecca told herself it was charming. She unloaded her bag, started a fire in the living room, poured a glass of red wine, and curled up on the old leather couch with a book. By 8 o'clock, the rain started. By 9, it was a downpour. The kind of Vermont rain that hits the window like fistfuls of gravel. Thunder rolled across the valley. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. Rebecca felt safe. There's a bird she remembers most clearly. She was wrong about that. At 9:47, she heard it, a soft sound, not a knock, more like pressure, like someone leaning against the bay window across the room. Rebecca looked up from her book. There was a hand on the glass, just a hand pressed flat against the outside of the window, fingers spread wide, palm flat against the wet glass, and the wrist disappeared into nothing. There was no arm attached to it, no shoulder, no body standing on the porch, just a hand pressed against her window like it had grown out of the rain itself. Rebecca froze. Her wine glass tilted in her hand. A drop spilled onto her jeans she didn't notice. The hand began to move. Slowly, so slowly, it slid downward across the glass, leaving a smear of water behind it. 5 inches, 10, then it stopped, and the fingers curled like it was trying to pull itself up, like it was trying to climb inside. Rebecca screamed. She dropped the wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood. She scrambled backward off the couch, hit the coffee table, knocked over a lamp. When she looked back at the window, the hand was gone. Just rain, just darkness, just an empty porch beyond the glass. Rebecca grabbed her phone. 1 bar of signal. She called 919. The dispatcher's voice cut in and out. The call dropped twice before she could finish a sentence. She checked every window, all locked, every door, all dead-bolted. The house was sealed tight. Then she did something stupid. She grabbed a flashlight, pulled on her boards, and stepped out onto the front porch. The porch was empty. She swept the flashlight across the wet wood, across the muddy ground, across the gravel driveway and the wall of maple trees beyond it. There were no footprints. Not in the mud, not on the boards, not anywhere. The rain had been hammering down for over an hour. Soft mud everywhere, and there wasn't a single footprint. No shoe prints, no paw prints, nothing. Whoever had been at her window had never walked there. Rebecca went back inside, locked the door, put the chain on, pushed an armchair against it. She told herself she imagined it. The wine, the long drive, the rain making ships out of rain on a window. She walked into the kitchen to pour a glass of water. Her hands were still shaking. She turned on the tap, filled the glass, took a long drink, and then she looked up at the kitchen window. The hand was there. Same hand, same flat palm against the glass. But this time it wasn't alone. There was a face beside it. A woman's face. Pale, wet hair plastered to her skull. Skin the color of old paper. And her eyes were missing. Not closed, not blind, missing. Where the eyes should have been, there were just two black holes. No wires, no iris, no reflection. Just darkness. Going somewhere deeper than her face should have allowed. And she was smiling. Her lips peeled back too far, way too far, and her teeth weren't human. There were too many of them crowded into her mouth in jagged rows, sharp pointed fish-like. Rebecca dropped the glass. She didn't scream this time. She couldn't. Her throat had locked. She turned and ran up the stairs, into the bedroom at the end of the hall. She slammed the door, threw the lock and pushed a dresser in front of it. Then she sat on the bed, phone in her hand, watching the bedroom window across the room. Second floor, 15 feet off the ground, no tree near it, no way to climb. She watched that window for 30 minutes. Nothing happened. The rain kept falling. The thunder kept rolling. She started to breathe again. Then the tapping started. Slow, soft at first. A single fingernail against the glass. Then more and harder and faster. Then a long, dragging scratch. Like someone pulling all 5 nails down the window at once. Rebecca's eyes locked on the glass. The hand was there, pressed against the bedroom window, 15 feet off the ground, with nothing to stand on. Then the hand came through the glass. The window didn't break, the glass didn't crack, the hand just pushed through. Like the window was made of water, like it was made of nothing at all. The fingers stretched out into the bedroom, reaching for her, and Rebecca saw them up close for the first time. The fingers were too long. The nails were black. The skin was gray, wrinkled like something that had been underwater for a very long time. And water was dripping off it. But it wasn't rain. The water was thick, brown, streaked with something dark. It was muddy water. Grab water. Rebecca ran out of the bedroom, down the hall, into the bathroom at the other end of the second floor. She slammed the door, locked it, and climbed into the empty bathtub, fully clothed, knees pulled up to her chest. She stayed there all night. The tapping started on the bathroom window, then the scratching, then the knocking on the bathroom door, and then the voices. Rebecca's grandmother had been dead for nearly 4 months. But that night, in that bathroom, Rebecca heard her voice on the other side of the door. Calm, warm, patient.
Rebecca, sweetheart, open the door. I came all this way. I just want to see you.
And then A man's voice, and a child's voice, and other voices Rebecca didn't recognize. Some crying, some laughing, some speaking words and languages Rebecca had never heard. She didn't move. She didn't answer. She didn't sleep. At 5:43 in the morning, everything stopped. Rebecca waited until the sun came up. Then she crawled out of the bathtub, grabbed her bag, and drove away. She didn't lock the front door. She didn't look back. She made it 20 miles before she looked in the rearview mirror. The woman was sitting in the back seat. Black eyes, sharp teeth, smiling. Rebecca screamed. The car swerved off the road, hit a tree at 50 miles an hour. The next thing Rebecca remembers is the hospital. Broken collarbone, 3 cracked ribs, a concussion. The state troopers couldn't figure out what had caused her to swerve. No other tire marks, no animals on the road, no mechanical failure. Just a young woman who'd panicked at something nobody else could see. 2 days later, her uncle came to visit. Her grandmother's younger brother, 81 years old, the only person in the family who'd ever known the Vermont farmhouse. He sat down beside her bed. He held her hand and he told her the truth. In 1962, Rebecca's grandmother had hired a live-in housekeeper at the farmhouse. A woman with no family, no friends, nobody in town knew much about her. She just appeared one day and she stayed. A few months later, she disappeared. Officially, unofficially, Rebecca's grandmother had locked the woman in the basement for reasons nobody ever fully understood. Jealousy, maybe? Paranoia? Some old grudge that didn't make sense to anyone outside her own head. The housekeeper stayed in the basement for months, and then she died down there. And Rebecca's grandmother never told anyone, never reported it, never buried the body. The body was never found because it was never moved. Rebecca's uncle held her hand and told her he'd been carrying that secret for 60 years. He was sorry. He should have done something. Rebecca didn't say anything. She was looking past him at the hospital window. There was a hand on the glass. Just a hand, wrist flat, fingers spread wide, and no body attached. Rebecca's eyes still in that hospital. The doctors say she's stable. They say she'll heal. They say she just needs time and rest. But every night, the nurses on the 3rd floor say the same thing. Rebecca won't stop watching the window. And every morning, when the cleaning staff comes in to wipe it down, there are fresh handprints on the inside of the glass. That was Rebecca's story. Our next one happened the same month, 1,300 miles south, to a young woman who didn't inherit anything. She just made the mistake of walking back to her hotel alone in the rain. Savannah, Georgia is built on top of cemeteries. Whole neighborhoods stand on forgotten graves. The locals will tell you the dead in Savannah don't stay buried. They walk, they watch, and on the right kind of night, they follow you home. Ashley Brennan didn't believe in ghosts. She was 24 years old, a graphic designer from Chicago. She'd come to Savannah for a long weekend. Solo trip, her first ever. She wanted Spanish malls and sweet tea and old graveyards. She wanted ghost stories without the actual ghosts. She got more than she paid for. On her second night in town, Ashley booked a walking ghost tour. 8 p.m. start time, 15 people in the group. On guide, a tall man in a black coat who introduced himself as Marcus. The tour walked them through the historic district, Bonaventure Cemetery, the Sorrelwood House, Colonial Park. Marcus told stories about yellow fever epidemics, dueling pistols, and a woman in black who supposedly walked the streets after midnight looking for her drowned son. Ashley took pictures, laughed at the right moments, felt like a tourist. Then the storm hit. It came out of nowhere. 1 minute, the sky was clear. The next, thunder, lightning, then sheets of rain, the kind of warm Georgia downpour that soaks you in 3 seconds flat. The tour group scattered. Marcus shouted something about ending early. People pulled out umbrellas, ran for cars, ducked into birds. Ashley didn't have an umbrella. Her hotel was 6 blocks away. She figured she could make it in 10 minutes if she ran. She started running. The streets were nearly empty. Streetlights flickered. The gutters overflowed. Ashley's sneakers were already soaked. Her hair was plastered to her face. She passed a closed restaurant, a dark church, a row of shuttered shops. That's when she noticed the omen. She was walking right beside Ashley, maybe 2 feet away, matching her pace exactly. Ashley hadn't heard her approach. The omen was tall, pale, wearing a long black dress, the kind of dress you'd see in a museum, with a high collar and tight sleeves, and a scarf that fell to the ankles. 1800s style, hair pinned up, skin like wet paper. She had no umbrella, no raincoat, nothing on her head. The rain was hammering down, but the omen wasn't wet. Her dress was bone dry. Her hair was perfect. Not a single drop touched her. Ashley's brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe she had just stepped out of a doorway. Maybe she was about to go inside somewhere. Maybe Ashley was just tired and saying things wrong. And then Ashley looked down at the omen's feet. They weren't touching the ground, not quite, maybe 2 inches above the wet pavement. The omen wasn't running. She wasn't even walking. She was gliding, floating beside Ashley, matching her pace, 2 inches off the sidewalk. While Ashley's sneakers slapped through the puddles, the omen moved through the storm in complete silence. Ashley stopped. The omen stopped too. They were standing under a flickering streetlight in front of an old iron fence. Ashley turned her head just slightly to look at the omen directly. The omen was already looking back at her, smiling. Her teeth were small, even yellow with age. Her lips didn't move, her eyes didn't blink. The smile was just there, frozen. Ashley said the only thing her brain could produce.
Excuse me, are you okay?
The omen didn't answer. She just kept smiling, and then, without moving her mouth, Ashley heard a voice right next to her ear. A whisper, female, soft, almost gentle.
You shouldn't have come to Savannah, dear.
Ashley ran. She ran like she'd never run in her life. 6 blocks of pouring rain, past the closed restaurants, past the dark church, past the empty squares with their oak trees dripping Spanish moss. Her lungs burned, her shoes filled with water. She didn't look back, not once. She made it to her hotel at 12 minutes past 10. The lobby was empty, except for the night clerk. Ashley stumbled inside, dripping, shaking, gasping for air. The clerk looked up, then looked behind her, then looked back at Ashley. His face went pale. "Ma'am?" he said quietly. "There's a woman standing right outside the front door, watching you." Ashley turned around. The woman in black was on the sidewalk, maybe 10 feet from the hotel entrance, standing perfectly still in the pouring rain, bone dry, smiling, 2 inches off the ground. The clerk picked up the phone to call security. Ashley watched the omen through the glass doors. The omen didn't move, didn't blink, didn't get wet. A car drove past. Headlights swept across the sidewalk. The omen was gone. Ashley took the elevator to her room on the 4th floor. She locked the door, pulled the chain, pushed the desk chair against it. She didn't turn off the lights. She sat on the edge of the bed in her wet clothes and cried until her hands stopped shaking. At 2:17 in the morning, she heard something at her door. A soft scratch, then a softer one, like fingernails on wood. Then a voice.
"Ashley, open the door, baby. It's Grandma. I came all the way from Chicago to take you home."
Ashley's grandmother lived in Chicago. She was 73 years old, perfectly healthy and asleep in her own bed. 1,200 miles away. The voice came again, sweeter this time, more patient.
Ashley, I drove all the way down, sweetheart. Just open the door. I'll only stay a minute.
Ashley grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called her mother. Her mother picked up on the second ring. Confused, sleepy, Ashley asked if Grandma was home. Her mother said yes, of course she was. She had been at dinner with them 4 hours ago. Why was Ashley calling at 2 in the morning? Ashley hung up. The scratching at the door had stopped, but she could feel something on the other side of it, standing there, waiting. She walked to the door slowly, carefully, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the carpet right outside her door was soft. A dark wet circle, the shape of someone who'd been standing there for hours. And in the middle of the wet circle, bone dry, was a single perfect footprint, 2 inches above where the carpet should have been. Ashley didn't sleep. She watched the door until sunrise. At 6 a.m., she packed her bag, checked out of the hotel, and drove straight to the airport. She paid $400 to switch her flight to the earliest one home. That was a year ago. Ashley still lives in Chicago. She works the same job. She sees her grandmother every Sunday. But she doesn't look in mirrors anymore. Because 3 months after Savannah, Ashley was getting ready for work one morning, standing in her bathroom, brushing her teeth, and she happened to glance up at the mirror. The woman in black was standing right behind her, bone dry, smiling, 2 inches off the bathroom floor. Ashley turned around. The bathroom was empty. She turned back to the mirror. The woman was still there, closer now, smiling, wider. Ashley smashed the mirror with her hairbrush. She replaced it 2 weeks later. The woman appeared in the new one. She replaced it again and again. Eventually, Ashley stopped buying mirrors. She has none in her apartment now. None at all. But every time it rains in Chicago, every single time, Ashley locks her windows, pulls her blinds, turns on every light. Because 3 years later, she still sometimes feels someone walking beside her on the sidewalk, bone dry, smiling, floating 2 inches above the wet pavement, waiting for Ashley to turn around. That was tonight's 2 stories. You are going to think about them tonight. When you turn off the lights, that's okay. They are going to think about you too. If you want more stories like this, subscribe. Sleep tight.